Hello, I'm Roger Bohmrich. Welcome to this video version of my fine wine essay for Wineauctionprices.com. This episode is entitled New Benchmarks in Global Pinot Noir. And here we are, part one, Europe outside of Burgundy. Burgundian Pinot Noir is an archetype of near mythical stature. Most informed observers would say it is one of the most difficult of France's paradigms to replicate elsewhere in the world. Pinot Noir is widely seen as the ultimate challenge for a winemaker. This may well be part of its attraction. One of the German growers selected here, August Kessler, puts it this way, quote, "You have to be prepared to go through thick and thin every year with this diva, as we like to call her, and patiently endure her sensitivity and caprice from cultivation to the bottle," unquote. Can any other region match the extraordinary dimension and finesse of Burgundy's finest Pinot-based reds? While no one region has the range and diversity of Burgundy, there are exciting newcomers from Germany to Switzerland and California to New Zealand. The wines in our selection are in large part unknown to wine drinkers in other countries. How should we compare varietal Pinot Noir from other regions with the grape's myriad expressions in the fractioned vineyards of Burgundy? To fashion a selection of global benchmarks, the pressure is to compare one region against another or against Burgundy, even if such comparisons may not be easily made. Is it really possible to impose a global template on the taste characteristics of Pinot Noir, regardless of origin? We maintain that a Pinot does not have to taste like a Burgundy to be authentic and exemplary. In the words of critic Stefan Reinhardt, world-class red wines, even Pinot Noir, can come from wherever unique terroirs meet gifted winemakers. That's a statement that is at the very core of this presentation. Considering how temperamental Pinot Noir is thought to be and how sensitive to growing season temperature, why have plantings exploded over the past 20 years? Pinot Noir is, with more than 260,000 acres worldwide, the 12th most cultivated variety out of hundreds of possible wine grapes. Several countries are Pinot obsessed, particularly the United States. The US has leapt into the #2 spot in plantings just since 2000. France, without a surprise, remains the leader in bearing area, which has also grown over this same period. And Germany, yes, Germany is third, which may come as a surprise. The other front runners depicted on the graph have less acreage of Pinot, yet all, except Switzerland, have shown increases over the past 2 decades. Yes, the Pinot fever seems to know no borders. Well, what is the aim of this article? It is to take the pulse of Pinot Noir outside of Burgundy and try to identify the best, according to respected observers, those wines which deserve to be called benchmarks. This is an ambitious exercise, to say the least, and can only be done by relying on multiple sources and educated opinions. This is not just one person's judgment. To qualify for a top spot, the wine has to have a history of published reviews and ratings, arbitrarily above 90 points, for at least 5 consecutive vintages. Most of our benchmarks have been on the scene 10 vintages or longer. Wines showing promise, but with short histories, and there are many given the Pinot ferment worldwide, they've been placed on a watch list. This registry finally refers to individual wines, not wineries. There is often more than one thoroughbred in the same stable, true, and we have not imposed a limit for our benchmarks. We've also opted to divide the wines by country and region within two broad groupings: Europe, which we're addressing now in this installment, and then in the second part, the rest of the world. We suggest these selections be viewed less as a global hierarchy or classification than as a compendium of high-achieving wines with distinctive personalities, all expressing the finest qualities of Pinot Noir in the context of their regions. And that brings us to our first area of study in France, and it is Alsace. And Pinot Noir has a centuries-long presence here in this region. And for those who seek out wines from Alsace, the first thought is not of red, it is of white wines, perhaps from Pinot Blanc, Riesling, or Gewürztraminer. It is telling that Pinot Noir was not among the official 4 noble grapes, which could claim the mantle officially of Grand Cru. This forced Pinot Noir to be planted in less favorable locations. But some growers refused to give up or give in, devoting precious parcels in their Grand Cru holdings to this variety. A campaign to give official status to Pinot Noir in Grand Cru sites has been underway over the past decade. And there is news as of 2022. Pinot Noir has now been sanctioned for 2 Grand Crus, Kirchberg de Bar and Hengst, which brings us to the very first benchmark. And it is from an outstanding grower with a reputation across their entire range of wines, which goes well beyond Pinot Noir. But certainly they are considered to be one of the champions of the variety in Alsace, Albermann, and the bottling is Grand H, the Grand H, which takes its name from the vineyard site that you see, which is a Grand Cru. Hengst is the one. They work organically, biodynamically. The vineyard here is extremely complex in its soil makeup, allowing multiple grape varieties to be grown. Marl, limestone, and sandstone are just some of the elements making up the soil, and they tend to prefer half-whole clusters. But consider these comments for the 2015 Albermann Grand H from Andrew Jefford in Decanter magazine. More Gevrey in style than Chambolle, with meaty flesh and ripe tannins. I've never tasted a better Alsace Pinot Noir than this. And our second benchmark comes from another specialist in Pinot Noir, Zusslin, and it's their Bollenberg Luft, which is the successor to their Harmonie bottling. And this is a site in the vineyard that you see. It's sandy clay over hard Jurassic limestone. Zusslin practices a really drastic or severe sorting 3 times. The grapes are completely destemmed. The punching down is by hand 3 times per day, and the wine is aged 24 months in 10% new barrels. Well, let's consider the opinion of Stefan Reinhardt in the Wine Advocate about the 2016 Luft of Zusslin. Utterly silky and balanced on the palate. This is a full-bodied, very intense and dense, yet vibrantly fresh, if not dramatic, and highly elegant Pinot Noir. Well, next we move to Champagne. And it goes without saying that the fame of this region rests on sparkling wines. Yet Pinot Noir is the most planted grape and accounts for nearly 32,000 acres, or 38% of all vineyards. Pinot Noir serves many purposes here. It does enhance the elegance of many rosés with and without effervescence. Among these is the singular and rarely seen appellation of Rosé des Riceys from the Kimmeridgian soils of the Côte des Bars in the Aube, the south of the Champagne districts. Also sourced in Riceys is a new old vine, Côte de Champenois, the appellation for still wines here in Champagne, named Enchanzeux, launched recently with the vintage 2019. This wine results from a collaboration of Michel Chapoutier of the Rhone Valley and Champagne de Vaud. Here, warming temperatures are a boon for still wines in a place where grapes often struggle to reach complete ripeness. Enchanzeux tells the tale of a changing climate. It was picked at a potential alcohol of nearly 13.5%. Well, our benchmark from Champagne, one of them, is from the house of Bollenberg. It's their La Côte aux Enfants. It's from a selection from the vineyard that you see there in Grand Cru Hailly in the photograph. 1/3 is vinified in whole clusters. It's aged 8 months in small oak barrels. And our second benchmark is from a grower, well-known, highly respected Aigli-Ourier. It's their Cuvée des Grands Côtés, and it's an old vines bottling. Vines are about 50 years of age, selected from multiple parcels. This is the Grand Cru Embonné. They do a green harvest. It's given about 20 months in small oak barrels, a little less than 1/3 new. There's no fining, no filtration, and it's bottled by hand. Here are comments from William Kelly in the Wine Advocate about the 2017. Medium to full-bodied, velvety and enveloping, with exquisitely refined tannins, racy acids, and a long, pungently floral finish. Well, yes, there are numerous red wines on our watch list, poised to become benchmarks. Trends, climatic trends favor the talented. And one of the wines to flag is from an excellent producer known as Tarlon. And it comes with a long name, Longue Attente à Celles-les-Condés. And here are comments from Stefan Reinhardt about the 2016. Exotic and exciting nose intertwines the sweet charm of ripe red and spicy dark fruits with the purity and finesse of a warm, shallow limestone terroir in a cool climate. Everything here is clear, dry, fine, and fresh. Well, the Loire is next. And the image of this region rests overwhelmingly on white wines, mostly bone dry, but all the way to, on occasion, very sweet liquoureux styles. Still, a handful of growers in the heart of the region known as Centre-Loire have made credible red wines, specifically in Sancerre, using Pinot Noir, which most outsiders have rarely, if ever, encountered. Yet, yes, few have a record of achieving something of real substance. But here too, conditions are changing, and so are the red wines. There is one acknowledged benchmark for now. Comes from an excellent domaine Vacheron, and it's a single vineyard bottling Belle Dame, which has been sold since 1995. This domaine is certified organic and biodynamic. Belle Dame is on flint or silex soils, currently 50-year-old vines. They do picking by hand. Fermenting is in upright wood casks with indigenous yeast, a long maceration up to a month. And then at the end, the wine is aged 18 months in French oak barrels. No fining, no filtration. Wine Enthusiast says it best in their review of the 2019. It shows why Beldam, that is, why Vacheron is a master of red Sancerre. Now we come to Germany. And as you'll see, Germany is a focal point of our story. In the words of Vienna-based Falstaff magazine, Germany is making some of the most exciting Pinot Noirs in the world. While German Pinot Noir has never taken the lead with foreign drinkers, the grape, typically called Spätburgunder, has been cultivated for centuries, perhaps since the 9th century CE. But how many people know that today Pinot is the country's second variety after Riesling, just ahead of Müller-Thurgau? Outstanding localities have been cultivated in numerous regions, such as Baden with nearly 13,000 acres of Pinot Noir, Pfalz, Rheinhessen, on soils as varied as basalt, slate, and limestone. The grape's share of wine may be greatest, however, in R, where it commands 2/3 of the vineyard surface. The possibility to explore and exploit vineyards of Grand Cru stature was not suppressed here in Germany as it was in Alsace. By the 1990s, a Pinot Noir movement had taken hold in Germany. The earliest examples, as Jancis Robinson has explained, were barely mature and often pale grayish pink. Things have changed. Styles have continued to be refined. Use of new oak has been dialed back. And critically, as Germany's climate warms, Pinot is able to benefit from a longer maturation period and produce fully mature wines while keeping an excellent acid level. Just as one interesting example of the surging interest in the variety. Did you know that the celebrated Schubert family at Maximin Grünhaus planted 1 hectare of Pinot Noir in 2007 in their legendary Abstberg vineyard? As Jancis Robinson has said, the 2010s ushered in a golden era of Pinot Noir in Germany. Our first benchmark is from the Rheingau, perceived as the bastion of Riesling. This vineyard, this celebrated vineyard in Assmannshausen, the Höllenberg, is on an incredibly steep 45% slope of purple phyllite slate. And it's one of Germany's most celebrated sites for Pinot Noir. This Grand Cru, or VDP Grosse Lage, has been cultivated with the French grape, it's thought, since 1470. Vines are now about 80 years old, some of them ungrafted. The wine is aged 20 months or so in Burgundy barrels, 2/3 new. And again, thoughts and reactions from critic Stefan Reinhardt about the 2018 Höllenberg. A full-bodied, rich, and silky textured, very intense yet pure, fresh, and elegant Pinot Noir of remarkable finesse, complexity, and length. And on to Pfalz. Curiously, there are German vineyards actually situated in France, in Alsace. A prominent example is the Grosse Lage Hedenreich, a monopole exclusive holding of Friedrich Becker, placed on a deep limestone base with loose soil covering. And you can see the location of the Hedenreich vineyard in the map at the left, and just below it is another famous vineyard, the Sainte Paul. Well, notes from Stefan Reinhardt about the Hedenreich 2018. Warm and fine bouquet of fully ripe black berries, forest floor, leather, horse stable, cold smoke, and spices, and the lingering salinity and energy of a great limestone terroir. And in Baden, to the Wassmer family, specifically the Sommerhalde bottling of Fritz Wassmer in Bohmrich, soils of limestone and loess, a palate graced with sour cherry, clove, licorice, red plum, all underpinned with dark spice. Comments from the judges of the Decatur World Wine Award 2020, where this wine won a platinum medal. And then Franken, and to a very famous family, the first family, one of Germany's true Pinot pioneers, says Anne Kabil, MW. And they have 3 Grosses Gewächs, Grand Cru vineyards, Hunsrück, St. Grafenberg, and Schlossberg. You see the Hunsrück vineyard in the photograph at left, red Triassic sandstone. And the family themselves thinks that Hunsrück is their flagship vineyard. They work with a high percentage of whole clusters and open wood vats. There are many benchmarks that we've identified in Germany. It's long, and yet it may well be incomplete. It would take a very deep dive to give credit to all, perhaps in a second edition. But there are many, many deserving wines to seek out and judge for yourself. On to Italy. And outside Italy, wine drinkers are far less likely to think of Pinot Nero than they are all the indigenous grapes and wines, which seem to be more closely tied to the country's cultural identity. Still, there are over 12,000 acres of Pinot Noir across Italy. Well over half the plantings are found in Lombardia, followed by Trentino Alto Adige and Veneto. As elsewhere, the variety does have an important role in classic method sparkling wine, including here, 2 DOCG, Oltreppo Barese, and Franciacorta from Lombardia. Our selection of top Italian Pinots comes mainly from cool climate Alto Adige, also referred to as Südtirol, in honor of its Austrian heritage. In this area, a bilingual area, the grape may be named Blauburgunder. In the Wine Advocate, Monica Larner has written, it's impossible not to be excited by these quality results with Pinot Noir from the far north of Italy. And our first benchmark is indeed from Alto Adige. It's from Guerlain, their Vigna Gangere. It's a Riserva from the Mazon district. Calcareous clay. They work with about 1/5 whole clusters, and it's aged 20 months in barrique. In the opinion of Gambero Rosso, the 2017 vintage, finesse, elegance, and complexity can be perceived right from the nose, and everything is balanced to perfection by an acidic freshness. And even Tuscany, yes, Tuscany has a benchmark, Pinot Nero, rare as it is. And it comes from a producer that's very well known, perhaps not for this wine, the Cassevet. It's fermented in the tronquenite-shaped Allier uprights and aged a year in Tronçais barriques. This is what Monica Warner wrote about the 2016. A very special expression of the grape that shows darkness and increased concentration in this beautiful vintage. This wine offers a purely Tuscan take on Pinot Nero. Well, here is our list of Italian benchmarks. And yes, it is relatively short and shows the importance of Alto Adige for Pinot Nero as a still red wine in Italy. Switzerland is terra incognita for wine lovers. Merely 1% of the country's varied and highly regarded wine production is exported. It is hardly known that Pinot Noir, also called Blauburgunder, is the leading variety, contributing 28% of all production from just about 10,000 acres under vine. Records from the canton of Vaud show that the grape, under the name Cervagna, has been grown since 1472. As in Burgundy, the identity of some Swiss Pinot is concealed behind place names or appellations, such as Neuchâtel or Graubünden. Here in the Three Lakes or Trois-Lacs region, vineyards are concentrated along the shore of Lake Neuchâtel. Pinot Noir accounts for nearly half of all plantings. It is indeed a sort of miniature Burgundy. The same Jurassic limestones of Jura and Burgundy underpin the best vineyards, with coverings of stony to heavier marl. Our first benchmark from Switzerland is a famous wine name, La Maison Carrée, the square house, and several of their wines merit attention. They are a certified biodynamic property. They do hand harvesting. Nearly all the grapes are stemmed. The vatting is up to 3 weeks in open concrete. They employ an old hydraulic press, and aging is in barrels of various sizes, from typical Burgundian pièces of 228 liters to large foudre. And the wine that we're identifying as the benchmark from La Maison Carrée, one of them, is Haute Rive that you see here. Super pure, fresh, and acetic on the elegant, precise, and terroir-driven nose. Coming from extremely rocky limestone soils, this is dense, well concentrated. I adore this radical, puristic style that gives so much vitality and grip, as well as finesse, says Stefan Reinhardt. And then to an entirely different part of Switzerland, to the east, in Deutschschweiz, the German section, to the zone called Graubünden, and to another excellent artisan grower, the Fromm family. And they have several wines that deserve to be recognized. Schöpfe is the one that we've identified for you here. It's a clos planted with French clones, very small in size, merely 65 arles, 2/3 of a hectare, 1.6 acres. It's certified organic. The soils are sandy and calcareous. They prefer about 1/3 whole clusters. It's fermented in old open wood vats and matured for about 13 months in 20% new barriques. Well, let's lean once more, if we can, on Stefan Reinhardt for a tasting note. The 2018 Schöpfe, deep, intense, and concentrated, yet pure and flinty bouquet, displays perfectly ripe cherries and dark berries with exotic and ethereal spices, round and generous, yet refined and crystalline. And then finally, to close this part, another wine from Graubünden, Gantenbeim. And you see the spectacular location identified with that large red arrow on the map in eastern Switzerland, not too far from Austria. The owners, who do all the work themselves, Martha and Daniel Gantenbeim, soils are schist and gneiss. They prefer Burgundy clones, which are quite densely planted. Their vines now are about 30 years old. Hand harvesting, gentle destemming, open top wood fermenters in a very stylish contemporary winery, gravity fed. About 1/5 whole clusters, 14 months in all new French barriques, no fining, no filtration. And finally, a note about volumes, which hasn't really been mentioned up until now. Here, they produced about 2,000 cases on average of 9 liters of their estate Pinot Noir. And that is actually more than most of the wines which we flagged as benchmarks from all the many regions. So here's our summary list of the top wines. You may be surprised by the considerable number of high-achieving Pinot Noirs in Switzerland. Perhaps our selection leans towards being generous, but our aim is to offset the considerable challenge of finding any of the wines. Well, that brings us to a close, to the end of part 1. We're going to continue in the same vein in part 2, focusing on California, Oregon, New Zealand, and Australia. Please join us. And in the meantime, to read the full essay, which is far more extensive in content than this presentation, and to look closely at all the lists and to consider other essays about the world of fine wine, please go to wineauctionprices.com. I hope you found this interesting. Cheers.